Welcome to episode 28 of the Gambots podcast. I'm your host, Eric, and this is my co-host.
It's Christian.
On this week's episode, Christian watched the Netflix original Umbrella Academy. I finished the first season of Person of Interest. Christian saw the new movie Wonder Park, and I'm going to give you guys a quick review of Puyo Puyo Tetris, and then finally we'll finish it up with some video game news. But first, Christian, you got to watch Umbrella Academy this week. What'd you think of it?
It was a lot. So this is a Netflix original, like you said. It's based on a Dark Horse comic, and it is real strange.
I actually saw a little bit about this, and it looked really interesting, but someone who I generally share opinions with, I talked to him, and he said it was just okay, so I was really curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, just okay is fair for this. So it goes in a lot of different directions. It's not bad, I'll say that. It's definitely not bad, but it's not great. It is a mess as far as plots go. There are at least 4 or 5 major plots running throughout this whole thing, not to mention like the subplots of each individual episode. It gets a little tricky to keep track of after a little while. It's definitely a show that I feel like if you didn't try to watch it in one go, like if I don't know that you could keep up with it if you put a week between each episode.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I think a lot of Netflix shows are actually just elongated movies to a certain extent.
Yeah, that's definitely kind of the feel that this one had. And sometimes, like with Stranger Things, I'm more than happy to have a movie that's like 12 hours long, whatever it is. But yeah, this one, maybe not so much.
So on the previews I saw for this, I was getting a like weird X-Men style vibe. Am I off on that, or how is the cast on this one?
The cast was like a mid-sized cast. There weren't like too many people that you had to keep track of. there was almost as many plots as there were cast members. But it's about a group of people that were all born on the same day, kind of spontaneously. Like the women all became pregnant and gave birth like immediately. And they were, as far as you know, almost all of them were born with some kind of ability. And this crazy, like rich old man adopted 7 of them and formed kind of like an X-Men superhero school. Except instead of being like the nice teacher Charles Xavier guy, he was kind of just the worst.
So do they go into 2 things, I guess? Number one, do they go into why these women became pregnant? I know they might have addressed it in the comic this is based on, but I'm wondering if they go over it in the show, and do they explain why this guy adopted the kids?
Why the women became pregnant? No, never mentioned. Why he adopted the kids is a little unclear. I mean, his motivation, as was presented on its face, is that he knew something special had happened and he wanted to like figure it out, and so he tried to adopt as many of them as he could, but he only got 7 of them. As the series progresses, and especially at the beginning of the last episode, you're given some information that there's more to him than you knew originally, but not much information is given out. There's like a quick flashback. This is one of the plots that gets introduced at the 11th hour, and then you're just kind of left scratching your head.
So you say that it's really overstuffed with plots. Can you give some examples of those? And did you like any of them more than others?
Yeah, some of them were cool. Like, so the main plot, I guess the A plot, is stopping the apocalypse. One of the characters can travel through time, and he comes back from the future as an old man in like his child body. So he comes back as like a 10 or a 12-year-old, but he's really like 70 something, I think. And so he knows that the apocalypse happens in like 4 or 5 days from the beginning of this. And all of the siblings, who are all estranged and they all kind of hate each other and their dad because of their upbringing, have to reconcile their differences and work together to try and figure out what causes and then stop the apocalypse. So that was a pretty good plot line. Then there's a couple of time traveling hitmen who come back for the time travel brother, and they're constantly fighting them at the same time as they're figuring out this other mystery. That plot was pretty cool. Mary J. Blige plays one of the time traveling hitmen, so that was kind of wild. But then there's some dumb ones. They're trying to figure out if their dad was murdered or if he just died naturally. That kind of goes nowhere. They're trying to figure out what's wrong with their mom, who is a robot. That kind of goes nowhere. Oh, also in this, there is a talking chimpanzee butler that is literally never addressed.
I kind of like that idea, just because it's so ridiculous.
Ellen Page plays like the straight character. She's the sibling that has no powers. And so she comes home for her dad's funeral, and there's Pogo, the chimpanzee butler, and she's like, "Hi, Pogo." And you're just sitting there going like, what is this? And yeah, I think it's briefly touched upon once that they were like, he says something like, "Your father made me what I am." And that, like, that's literally, there's no point in the show where they talk about why this chimpanzee butler is there and how he came to be there.
That's awesome. That kind of reminds me of like the Power Rangers had Alpha, like a robot, or the Beetleborgs were just friends with monsters. And then you just like accept that as the fact.
Yeah, that's what they expect, I guess. It's like, you don't need to know where he came from or why he is the way he is. It's just, this is part of the story now, and deal with it and move on.
So what do you think of the characters? I know a lot of shows like this really depend on how well you either like the characters or really get into their motivations.
Some of them are fine. Some of them are less fine. They all kind of suck in one way or another. Like they definitely have moments of just kind of irredeemability. They definitely are all very, very flawed characters, which I guess is kind of like the trendy thing now, to be more realistic and show everyone's flaws. But man, these characters there's a lot of them. I guess you could chalk it up to that they were raised poorly by this old man who never really cared about them. He just cared about their powers. And so they're all kind of broken in one way or another, but there's a lot to get through.
And what about their superpowers?
Some of them are more generic. You have the one is like super strong and like big. You've got the girl who can kind of control minds a little bit. She like whispers in their ear and they do stuff. You've got the guy who can talk to ghosts, who is for sure the best character. His name's Klaus, and he's just a junkie. He keeps taking all these drugs because they stop the ghosts from talking to him, and he's just like wild and crazy the whole time. Like I said, there's the time travel brother, but then there's a couple of stranger ones. There is a kid who like pulls his shirt open and a bunch of spectral tentacles come out and grab people. So I don't know if he's half monster, if he can summon a monster. He's not really in it that much.
Is it like Goose style from Captain Marvel?
Yeah, kind of. And then there's a guy who can just throw knives really well. I guess it's supposed to be like any thrown object will almost always hit its mark or always hits its mark. So he just throws knives good. So that was a weird superpower. And he plays like a Batman character. He's one of the only ones who's like fully embraced his power and gone full vigilante. It's a real strange show.
Yeah, that power is pretty funny. It reminds me of Domino, where she's just lucky. It's like one of those things where, is this really a power?
Yeah, it was. I was watching it and I kept trying to, for the first like 2 episodes, I kept trying to figure out like, what's his deal? And then I was like, oh man, his power is just knives.
It's not even like he generates the knives. It's just he has to throw them.
Yep. So he's always got a bunch of like projectiles on him somewhere.
Dude, it would be so awesome if either in the comic or this show they had him throwing forks at one point at a nod to the Blue Raja on Mystery Men.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So overall, what did you think of this? How was it received? Do you think it's been received properly?
It's got an 86% on Rotten Tomatoes. I think that's high. Like I said, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. I know a lot of the hype online, especially on Twitter, has been talking about this. A lot of my coworkers have been talking about this, trying to get me to watch it. And I had watched the first couple episodes and got kind of into it, and I wanted to see where it went. Yeah, 86% is high. I'd probably put it in the 60s somewhere. It has a lot of potential. It's just squandered, I guess. The series finale, it leaves a lot to be desired, even to the people that enjoyed the show more than I did. I was just talking to somebody and she said, oh yeah, nobody likes the finale. Like, oh good, that I'm not alone in that at least. So I'll probably watch season 2 because it does end on a cliffhanger. I'd like to see where it goes, but if it doesn't grab me by the end of that, I think I'm done.
So this past week, I finally finished watching the first season of Person of Interest. And Christian, have you heard of this show by chance?
I have, but it's just from reading the notes that you have, it's much different than I thought it was.
Yeah, so I haven't actually, I never had heard of this show before. I might have saw a preview or something when I was watching TV over the years because it was originally released in 2011, so I might have saw it over the years on television or something like that, but I never actually paid attention. And so I haven't honestly watched like what I would consider one of the longer shows on Netflix, which are 45 minutes. I usually watch like the 25-minute shows, and I've actually moved over to Hulu a lot more. But I used to watch a lot of network procedural shows like this. Like I really liked Burn Notice. I really liked White Collar. I watched Numbers and Life and things like that. But nothing really has grabbed my attention since. And I know my taste, and Person of Interest has like the formula of what hooks me on these shows. I wouldn't say that they are like high art form shows that everyone's going to love. Like everyone who's watched Breaking Bad really likes it, and I think that's one of the better written shows. Person of Interest is very much a procedural show.
Yeah, it's when I would see previews for it, it seemed like it was just going to be like a standard kind of maybe not a CSI, but like just a standard kind of cop show, like Criminal Minds is what comes to mind.
Yeah, I haven't seen Criminal Minds, but it is basically one of those shows, which for whatever reason they have a formula that works for me. But what's interesting about this was it is actually created by Jonathan Nolan. And he's most known for, he's written some episodes for Westworld, and he wrote the screenplay for The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, as well as Interstellar. So the basic premise is that one of the characters, played by Michael Emerson, who goes by the name of Harold, created what is basically a sentient or some form of machine that seems like it's sentient, where it looks at a ton of data that comes in through the NSA that was supposed to stop terrorist attacks, but also is able to predict crimes. So then it follows this character and then another character who is an CIA operative played by Jim Caviezel, and they go along New York City and basically try and prevent either people from doing something bad or helping people who a bad thing is going to happen to them for. And apparently in the later seasons, it gets pretty sci-fi-y. But in the first season, it was pretty standard, but I still really liked it.
Yeah, it sounds like much more sci-fi than I would have expected a show like that to be.
Yeah, so other than the premise, it's like the other shows that I mentioned before. Each episode is basically a flavor of the week case that they're trying to solve and help someone. And then also each episode has like an overarching storyline of them trying to deal with a larger problem. Like there's a crime lord named Elias who they're trying to deal with, or the CIA is looking for one of the characters, John Reese, or he's being hunted down by the police. But what I do really like about the show, which I sort of allude to in Umbrella Academy, is I really like the cast of it. There's 4 main characters. My favorite is probably Michael Emerson, who plays Harold Finch. I think he's probably more well-known for playing Benjamin Linus on Lost, and I never liked his character on Lost, but I always thought he was a good actor, so I'm glad I actually get to see him in a role in which I enjoy his character with. Jim Caviezel, I looked him up. I'd never seen him before. He played Jesus in The Passion of the Christ.
Yep, that's the only thing I know him from.
It seems to be all he's really done, Christian, which surprised me. Going through his IMDb, he's not been in a lot.
Yeah, I think I am really only familiar with his name because I've never seen Passion. I think I'm only really familiar with his name because of a skit that Family Guy did about like Passion of the Christ 2 with him and Chris Tucker.
Maybe he is a better actor, but I don't love the character he plays, John Reese. He seems like he's relatively likable guy, but he has like the gruff little bit of the Batman voice, and he doesn't deliver very many lines. Like he's just supposed to play the tough guy. So I actually think he might be, even though he's a star, he might be a weak point of the series. I guess I would say that after season 1, I've watched part of season 2, and he's had a little bit more character development by his interactions with Harold. So I am liking him more in season 2 now, but in season 1, I thought he was the weak point. So overall, I thought it was really good. I will probably end up watching the entire series. I know there's 103 in total over, I believe, 5 seasons, and I'm about 23 down in the first season and 8 or 9 into the second season. So this is one I have a feeling I'm going to finish. It's one that I can pop in and pop out of if I need to, or just watch one episode and be fine for the day. I don't have to keep watching over, keep it going unless I want to. So I would suggest checking it out if you have some time on your hand, but really there's so much TV going on anymore. I feel like you just got to find what works for you. It's almost impossible to watch everything.
That is very true.
Which is a little bit disappointing because there's so much TV going on, and I know we've talked about it a little bit, but like if you want to play video games and watch TV and watch movies, you only have so many hours of your day, and like watching an entire season of television sometimes can take upwards of 15 hours.
Oh man, I know. Like it was a struggle for me to get through Umbrella Academy for a couple reasons, but one of them just being like I've got so many other things going on, and like anytime I was at home, I was like, I should really keep watching this. I think I might like it if I get into it. I was kind of wrong, but anytime I was at home, it was like, or I could play Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yeah. That's what's kind of rough with the fear of missing out, like entertainment industry as it is now, with like Netflix just pumping out entire series. Is you have to sort of watch like 12 hours of television over the weekend if you want to be in like the cultural zeitgeist. Otherwise, you can still talk about it whenever you finish, but it's not really the same.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know. I'm joining the person of interest way late. I think it ended in 2016, so this will probably be the only time I ever talk about it with anyone. This weekend, Christian, you saw the new animated feature film Wonder Park. I have not actually seen anything about this. What did you think of it?
Yeah, so that's not surprising, which is something I'm going to touch on towards the end. I really liked it. I liked it a lot more than I thought I was going to. The previews leave a lot out of the actual story, and so a lot of the story elements were surprising to me, which is not something I'm used to. I've seen a lot of previews, especially recently, where like the ending is given away in the preview, which is kind of wild to me. So it was nice to see something where I went in with kind of no context or expectations.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback with you there. That's basically why I try not to watch previews anymore, because I find they do ruin it a little bit. And the ones that do get me are the ones that either show something from like the extended scene or something that wasn't even in the movie. Like I remember Wreck-It Ralph 2, they had some scene with him feeding pancakes to animals or something, but that was actually like a bonus scene. It wasn't part of the movie at all. So I did like a little bit of that misdirection.
Yeah, it's I think the Marvel world does it well with this not Endgame, but the past Avengers movie, Infinity War. There were a bunch of scenes in the previews that just had nothing to do with the movie and weren't in the movie at all. And like looking back, were impossible to be in the movie.
Yeah, I do appreciate that, because I mean, especially for you at your job, it's almost impossible for you to miss previews.
Yeah, and like now this is a bit of a digression, but I love movie trailers. I'm very passionate about movie trailers. I think there should be an Academy Award category for movie trailers, and so I take them pretty seriously, and I absorb as much as I can about everything forever. I'm the guy who's like, oh, Avengers released a new trailer. It's just a tiny bit different from the old one. I'm going to watch the crap out of that a couple of times. I love my trailers. But getting back to Wonder Park, it's really good. It's about a girl who builds an imaginary amusement park with her mother, and then a few things happen and she finds herself in the park in real life. It has like become real, and it's all messed up and broken because she had stopped playing with it and she'd stopped imagining things for it. And so it fell apart, and then like a dark cloud came and started ruining the park. It deals with a lot of heavy elements in places. There's a lot in it about grief and growing up and trying to find a middle ground between being imaginative and being creative and childlike, and also like being serious and having to do serious things and deal with serious issues. It doesn't handle those themes as well as, say, the movie Up, where like the beginning of the movie Up is just kind of heartbreaking, and it was done so well. And it takes the right kind of storyteller to be able to tell those stories well, especially in a kids movie. I think they did a pretty good job with this one, but it's not as good as like other ones that I've seen.
So the premise, when you're saying they created an imaginary park, her and her mom, how is that presented in the beginning? Is it something they're doing like in their house, or like are they getting boxes out? Like, what do you mean by they're creating an imaginary park?
A little bit of both. So it starts with her as a small child, and it's kind of all just imaginary. It's all make believe. They're drawing pictures, and she's drawing little like kids' doodles of talking animals that run the park. And then as she gets a little older, and she's like 9 or 10, maybe they start building like scale amusement park rides in the house. Like there's a roller coaster going down the steps and stuff like that. And so the park kind of grows up with her, like her imagination. As she gets better at building things, her imagination grows too. And then it gets to the point where she starts building real rides and then putting herself in danger.
Man, this really reminds me of like either a children's book or like maybe not a young adult novel, but one of those like kids books. It really reminds me of something, and I wish I could figure out what it was. But it sounds like a really cool premise.
It is, and yeah, so a couple of things kind of start to fall apart in her life, and so she stops playing with the amusement park. And then once she finds the real life version, she has to come to grips with the fact that she's lost a part of herself and try to get it back. And so, yeah, like I said, there's a lot of darker, heavy themes in this that get dealt with in one way or another. There's a lot left unexplained at the end, like, was the park real? When she leaves, it disappears, and like, can she go back whenever she wants? Who knows? Was it all in her imagination the whole time? Who knows? And I kind of like that. It's probably better that they left it that way, because then it's like, well, is it magic or is it imagination? Is there a difference? I really liked it a lot. I won't say exactly how everything like shakes out at the end, but I did like how they tied everything back at the end.
That's good. I mean, in looking on Rotten Tomatoes, it seems like your view is a little bit different than the general populace's view on it.
Yeah, so the Rotten Tomatoes score is terrible. The critics put it at 29%, the audience put it at 40%, and that's so low. I'm kind of at a loss. Usually I put things lower than the audience does. I don't know if it's the company that ran it. So the animators is Paramount Animations, and they used to own DreamWorks until a few years ago. And this is only, I think, their fourth movie since DreamWorks left their animated division. And Wikipedia said in 2016 they only had 10 employees, so that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, to make a feature film with 10 people, that's insane.
They made the newest of the SpongeBob movies, which wasn't exactly a studio hit either. So yeah, this is their fourth try. And I don't know if they just don't have the money for an ad buy, because like you said, this is kind of nowhere. I didn't see this advertised anywhere except here at work. And when you're going up against heavy hitters and powerhouses like Disney, Pixar, and DreamWorks, now that they're their own independent company, and Illumination, which does the Despicable Me and the Minions, the Minions, and even Warner Brothers Animation Group is throwing out these Lego movies left and right, and they're raking it in. And so when you're going up against these big companies, you're going to need a bigger ad buy, or your movie's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's going that way. Looking at their box office take.
So yeah, I don't know that would at least explain the box office. As far as the ratings, I don't know. Maybe it's because the trailer was so different than the actual content of the movie that people were a little shocked to take their kids to what they thought was going to be a goofy movie about a fantasy amusement park, and instead they have to deal with these things of grief and loss and whatever else. So it's I don't know. I was hoping that I was going to see a higher score. I was really surprised when I saw how low it was.
It doesn't seem like they spared expenses on it. It had about 100 million budget, and then they got the big voice name actors, which I think a lot of animated movies have to do nowadays. It looks like Jennifer Gardner was in it, Kenan Thompson, Mila Kunis, John Oliver, Ken Jeong. So there's some big names associated with it. Just really does not seem to be hitting its stride.
Yeah, that was something else that I'd forgotten to even put in my notes. Was the cast was huge. Like, yeah, it was almost every single person except the little girl was all like big name people. It was all people you've heard of.
Would you, I know I'm going to guess you will, but would you suggest people go check this out?
Yeah, absolutely. And rate it on Rotten Tomatoes and get that score up.
So about a week and a half ago, I platinumed Puyo Puyo Tetris, and I know on the last episode I said I wasn't going to review it, but I figured I'd give my thoughts on it. So Puyo Puyo Tetris was originally released on last generation consoles in 2014 and was ported to PlayStation 4 later in 2014, to the Nintendo Switch in 2017, and finally to Windows in 2018. And by its name, the entire game revolves around playing either Puyo Puyo or Tetris or some combination of both.
I'd laughed when I saw that you had tweeted that you had finally platinumed this, because I remembered you talking to me about it when I was out there about your personal feelings for this game. So I was like, oh, good, he's done.
Yeah, I mean, spoiler, personally, I do not really like this game, and I will go into some detail about it. But overall, I mean, it's a fine game. I think personal taste, though, it was not for me, and it was a mistake for me to go for the platinum, or at least buy it and then commit myself to the platinum. So they have a story mode in this game, which I will give it to them. They committed themselves to this story mode. There are a total of like 10 worlds or levels with 10 missions in each one. In the original game, it was 7, and then DLC was for 8, 9, and 10. But in the PlayStation 4 version, you get it all. And every challenge has a mini story before and after it, so they're explaining why you're doing what you're doing, but everything ends up in some game of either Puyo Puyo or Tetris or some challenge mode of those games. And honestly, I couldn't tell you what it was about. I watched the first couple of scenes, and then I kind of zoned out because I didn't care for it, but it was there, and I do commend them for putting it in. For the platinum, you need to get 100% on the story mode, but there's actually a little bit of wiggle room because some of it was DLC. Each mission has like a star rating system, so you need to get 3 stars, but because you have DLC, you only really need to get like 100 out of 130%, so it wasn't too bad. It just took some time because I got stuck on parts once I had to start getting the stars for the Puyo Puyo worlds.
Can I ask what might be a dumb question?
No, yeah.
What is Puyo Puyo?
Oh, sorry. I did not think this one through. So Puyo Puyo is, I believe, a puzzle game that originated in Japan. I know it was released on like the Sega Genesis, and it's basically a match 4 style game where these jelly blobs drop down from the top, and you have to organize them in a way where if you get 4 colors together, they pop and everything above it drops down. And the way you get points is you have to basically create a combo where you pop one and then everything falls into place, and you keep getting chains of popping 4s or however many. You can do more than 4 if you can get it to fall that way. And you get points by that, and you send objects over to your opponent, and it falls down on top of them, and they don't match and everything. So it's like a form of a puzzle game.
I knew Tetris, but I'd never heard of Puyo Puyo.
Yeah, I'd seen it before just in arcades and stuff, but I've never really played it. And even after playing this, I'm not a fan of Puyo Puyo. I do actually like Tetris, and the Tetris in this game I thought was really well done. And of the game modes in this one, they have everything you would expect from a puzzle style game, where they have speed challenges or you have to try and figure out optimal ways to place pieces. But the one mode I really hated was Fusion, where they combined both Puyo Puyo and Tetris. So you were dropping Tetris blocks and then building Puyos around them. And I could not figure out how to do it. I wasn't a fan of it. They also have a swap mode, which is pretty cool. You'll play each mode for like 30 seconds and then go back and forth. So it can kind of even the playing field. One of my biggest problems with this game is it is a relatively dead online because it's an older game. Everyone who's playing is very good at the game for the most part, and one of the trophies you have to get is you have to win 10 ranked matches. And I lucked out and I played some people at my skill level, but it took me over the course of 2 weeks. So I lucked out on some of those, but the online is pretty dead. And if you're not good at this game or you're just like an average player or whatever, you can lose within 30 seconds. There's some people on there who are insane that you get matched with because the player pool is so small.
Yeah, that would get real frustrating real quick.
Yeah, just to give you an idea, like my overall rank, win-loss total was I won 10, I lost 39 matches or something like that. So, it took me a bit of time, and sometimes like you couldn't find anyone to play. So that was a little bit annoying. There's also a extremely grindy trophy in this game where you have to pop 100,000 Puyos, which, to give you an idea, after getting every other trophy in the game, I had between 20 and 30,000 Puyos popped, and I played the game for a long time to get to that point. So popping 100,000 is insane. There actually is an exploit around it where you can go to like a super easy mode and just hold your joystick left. So I ended up putting a rubber band on it and doing that for like 8 hours on one Saturday and ended up getting it. But like that was an insanely grindy one.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Yeah, not that would not be a fun one unless you really like Puyo Puyo. They have a similar one for Tetris where it's get rid of 100,000 Tetraminos, but because every time you get rid of them, it's like a line of them, you get rid of, I think, 10 versus 4. Like, there's a huge difference. Metacritic gave this game an 81, and personally, of my personal tastes, I don't think it's that good, but I don't think I'm the target audience for this. If you're a big puzzle fan of either of these games, I'm sure that you would like this. I'm a super casual Tetris fan, and I didn't like it. The Puyo Puyo portion killed the game for me. Obviously, it's one of those games where I should have thought this through before I got it. So objectively, this is probably like it's an average puzzle game. So it's either like a B- or a C+. Like it's good. It does what it sets out to do. It does it pretty well. Some of the voices in it are annoying when you're like chaining and stuff and playing other people, but it works. Like there's nothing technically wrong with the game. I just did not really enjoy playing it, and I can't really fault the game for that because I just didn't like the underlying game of Puyo Puyo. In video game news this week, Google announced a new console, which I was really surprised to see because Nintendo, Microsoft, and PlayStation seem to have everything locked down on their side. Have you seen anything about the Google Stadia, Christian?
Not very much, no.
So it looks like it's an entirely streaming console where the idea is Google someplace is going to have thousands of high-end, top-of-the-line computers for you to play a game on, and then they will stream the game to you. So you can actually play it on anything that has a Google Chrome functionality. So like your Chromecast or your computer or whatever, and then you play it with a controller, which I think is a really cool idea and concept, but I don't know about an actual practice.
Yeah, that sounds like it's going to take a ton of bandwidth.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of what they're facing right now is I don't think I could play that at my house right now.
Yeah, I definitely couldn't.
Like, you could definitely do it in city centers like San Francisco. I bet you could. And I should point out, they're promising like 60 frames per second 4K levels of game, which is a lot of information.
Yeah. I don't know that I could run that at my house with like a dedicated console, let alone trying to stream it from the cloud.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things. I think it's really cool, and I do like the idea. I don't know what their price points are going to be. Are you going to have to pay $400 for a console and then still pay for the games separately? But if you have the internet for it, it is a really cool and somewhat futuristic idea, but I just don't know how it's going to roll out. I know like PlayStation Now has sort of a similar idea, and I think Shadow or something like that is out there. I don't know how this is going to work. The current infrastructure of the United States for like internet, and especially with the net neutrality repeal lately, I just don't know if we're going to get to the level where you can do that.
Yeah, I mean it's a cool idea. It's ambitious, but We'll have to see how it rolls out, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, they did tests of it where people were doing it with Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I heard mixed things about it, but it seemed like when it worked, it was really cool to be able to play that from your browser. I'm thinking in countries that have better internet infrastructure, like South Korea, with much faster speeds, maybe this could catch on there, but I don't really see this gaining traction outside of major metropolitan areas.
Yeah.
And even then, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they don't have great internet. I'm not too sure, but I know we have limited options here where I am. And in other video game news that I just wanted to point this out because I think it's pretty cool. Bethesda is releasing Morrowind for 3 between now and March 31st for the Elder Scrolls 25th anniversary. Did you ever get a chance to play Morrowind, Christian?
I never did, though. I heard it was like it. I'm pretty sure this is the one I heard was the best of the Elder Scrolls series.
Yeah, so this is the first Elder Scrolls game I played, and I've only played this and Skyrim. I think I liked this one better, but that could also just be nostalgia talk. I'm really, really curious to see how this holds up in 2019. And finally, we're going to play the Amazon review game. Just a quick recap, Christian is going to read me a 5-star Amazon review. I will get 2 yes or no questions to help me narrow it down. I can then request a second review. I will get 2 more yes or no questions, and then I can request a third review. I will get 2 more questions, and then I will have to guess. And this year we are keeping track of points. So if I get it on 1 review, it's 3, 2 reviews, 2, 3 reviews, 1. I am ready whenever you are, Christian.
All right. We'll start with This Film Rocks. Sorry about that. I promised myself I would never do that. I can't seem to help myself. This might be the most excited I've been about a movie since seeing Star Wars 32 years ago. Not even Lord of the Rings got me this stoked, and I love that series. I read an interview with the director in the Detroit Free Press. He described his initial meeting at the facilities in a conference room full of staff and notables. He uttered these words, "I hate CGI." As you would guess, they were quite stunned. It's because of this attitude he quickly became a favorite Hollywood director. His belief in using practical effects whenever possible is leading to more realistic and believable films than most of his peers. Favreau does his best to see his desire to see really cool and smart movies like most people. He really has faith in his audience, and it pays off tremendously.
Oh, I think you're giving me the director with Favre, and that sounds familiar. Is this movie from after 2007?
Yes.
Is this a Marvel movie?
Yes.
I'm going to need a second.
The first half of this movie is the best. Something about the dude being the bad guy just doesn't sit right. I did get 2 digital codes in my case, though. That was nice.
Is this Iron Man?
Yes, it is.
Okay. It was one of those where I was like, I bet I was like about to say like 2008, and I was like, I can't remember if that came out in 2008 or not.
Yep, it was 08. I'd found another review that I didn't include in here because it would have given it away pretty quick, I think. But it was talking about how 2008 gave us 3 absolutely amazing Marvel movies, and one of the ones that it listed was Incredible Hulk. And so I was like, ooh, this person does not know what they are talking about.
All right, guys, thanks for checking out our episode this week. Before we head out, we're going to shortly go over what we're going to be watching this week. But first, I want to say me and Christian are planning to do a special episode right before the release of Endgame. It might even end up being 2 episodes, I'm not sure. We're going to be rewatching the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies and basically talking about each of them and ranking them in some way. So if you guys want to follow along, that'll be really cool. I'm already 3 movies in, so my hope is I got 18 left to finish.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and get through them all before Infinity War. We'll see, or before Endgame. I should be able to. I had planned out to do 1 a day, but I'm gonna be out of the country for a few days, so I'm gonna have to speed up my timeline a little bit.
I figured I'd start early, and I kind of did it unintentionally because this weekend I watched Ant-Man vs. the Wasp on Netflix, And then I went and saw Captain Marvel, and I got really hyped for Endgame. So then I was like, I'm going to do this. And then I watched Captain America. So I probably won't go back and rewatch Captain Marvel again. I'm going to give myself some leeway, and I probably won't rewatch Ant-Man and the Wasp just because it will have been so close. But the other movies, like I haven't seen the first Thor since it came out, and maybe I didn't even see that one in theaters. Like I think I watched that like from the kitchen while my roommate was watching it in college or something. So I'm interested to see if how especially Phase 1 really holds up.
Yeah.
But otherwise, what else are you going to be checking out this week, Christian?
Well, Dumbo hits theaters this week. I might end up watching this. We'll see. I don't really have much of a connection to the original. I'm sure I watched it when I was very, very small, but I don't remember any of it. I do want to see the movie Captive State. I've heard it's very intense. Also, one of my friends told me it was one of the worst movies he's ever seen. So a little bit of a mixed bag there. So we'll see if I get a chance to see that before it leaves theaters. It's going to be soon, though, because it's not making much money. Other than that, I'm going to be working through the Marvel movies. And there's an HBO documentary I really want to see called The Inventor, about a woman who basically conned a whole bunch of rich guys out of their money by trying to fund a blood test machine that was impossible and didn't exist.
Oh, that sounds pretty interesting.
I feel similar to that as I felt about Firefest, where it was like, I remember when this was in the news. I remember when this happened a few years ago, and it always seemed like a little bit of a crazy story. So I'm interested to get a deeper dive into it than I have now.
So this week I am going to continue playing the game I'm currently trying to platinum. I am playing Nier Automata, which I had heard a lot of things about, and it seemed to be like a cult hit. I want to say it was 2017 that it came out, and it's been pretty awesome so far. So I'm excited to play more of that. It's like an action open world JRPG mashup. It's pretty fun. I do really like the combat in it. Otherwise, my goal this week is to watch Iron Man 2, and then I believe The Incredible Hulk. I'm trying to watch these in chronological order. So I think those are the next three in my chronology. All right, guys, thanks for checking out our episode. If you want to reach out to us and give us a suggestion for our Amazon review game, you can reach us on Twitter at Gambots Network, or you can email us at gambots.blog@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you.